Reaching China's silver generation. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Kitty Boo in Shanghai. Older consumers in China are often ignored by marketers, but they do represent real spending power. China has about 150 million senior citizens, but these older consumers are largely ignored by mainstream marketing and communications efforts, despite a combined annual income of between 300 and 400 billion RMB. This week on Thoughtful China, our experts, Kitty Lun, Kevin Gentle, and Kunal Sinha, will tell you why that's a mistake. Not only do they represent real spending power in their own right, they can wield enormous influence on big-ticket purchase by their children and grandchildren on things like property, cars, travel, and education. And Matthieu David, president of Daxue Consulting, will share a thought or two about the need for foreign businesses to adapt their own business to the elderly in China. But first, with us in the studio today is Tom Doctoroff, CEO Asia Pacific at JWT. Tom, welcome to our studio. We're talking about a very interesting group today. So how old is a senior to you in this market?
Well, China is actually a very young market in terms of disposable income and willingness to spend. In fact, marketers right now are fixated on the post-90s generation, the 90后. So it's relatively young, the senior segment, compared to other markets. I'd say 50 or 55 plus.
Okay, my parents are roughly in that age group, and me as Chinese, it's always hard for me to see them spending money on anything. Life is all about being very thrifty, you know? So do they really represent any spending power?
Well, they'll represent an increasingly large amount of spending power. I agree with you that older people are very thrifty, very cautious in terms of unlocking their savings because they still have a relatively protective view of the world and view outside as relatively unsafe. So they're perpetually saving for a rainy day. But I still believe that given A, the numbers of senior citizens, and B, their aggregate income, they're a huge market for the future. They're a huge golden potential down the road. But you do need to position products in a way that meets their own aspirations and their own desires.
Seems to me like marketers are heavily targeting people born in the 80s and 90s, the so-called 80后and 90后. So are you saying this age demographic is being neglected?
I'm absolutely saying it's being neglected. I think that this is one of the biggest marketing opportunities of the 21st century. By 2025, I believe 4 people out of every 10 in China are going to be the mature market. This is an incredibly large and relatively well-off age demographic. And right now it's hard to think of any marketers from inside China or even outside China that are aggressively targeting this segment. So it's a huge opportunity, and I think it's one that's being wasted. I'm hoping very much that marketers will wake up to the size and the scale of this opportunity.
So this group, what are they looking for?
Well, this group, I think, is caught between two realities. One reality is that they're relatively socially displaced. Their view of what they are in society and their connection to other elements of society is being reconfigured right now. So they question, what is my role? Where is my productive value in society? So on one hand, they're feeling displaced. But on the other hand, they are feeling like there's opportunities there that never were before. There's new freedoms to be explored and discovered. So I think that there's a tension between sense of displacement on one hand, but titillation at the new opportunities that a modern world is bringing. So brands, what they need to do is, on one hand, they need to reinforce the role of me, and on the other hand, strengthen the bonds of we. And I think brands that are able to do that are going to be finding loyalty amongst this segment.
So what type of things do they like to spend money on?
Well, right now it's obviously all about, as seniors age, and it will be about services, healthcare, travel. These are all things that can make them feel more secure and also more connected with the world. But there's a problem in that, for the most part, the services sector in China is relatively unmarketing driven. The service sector is largely controlled by the state. So this is a catch-22. The potential of the senior segment isn't really recognized because there's no case study, and the marketing structures of the organizations most suited to deliver services to them are relatively controlled by the state. So we're not seeing a lot of dynamism right now. So there needs to be economic liberalization, particularly in the services sector. And I suspect that it's then that we will see and feel the power of the silver citizen. Financial services obviously is another big opportunity, and this is very tightly regulated.
And for younger generation, yeah, we can use WeChat, we can use Weibo, we can use blog, and all these different ways to reach this group. Seems to me that it's really hard to reach this age demographic we're talking about. How do you influence them? How do you reach them as both, influencers and consumers? Is it TV?
Well, let's not say TV as if it's a dirty word. I prefer to call television commercials filmic expressions, and the young generation is responsive to filmic expressions that happen to be seen as pre-roll on the internet. But to answer your question, yes, television is a very good way to clearly define a proposition, and the senior market is still watching a lot of television broadcast by the central networks. So reaching them is not really the problem. The challenge is going to be engaging them, developing relationships with them that last over time. And in this sense, digital media is very important. But I don't think that the senior people are averse to experimenting with digital media. Tencent and other digital marketers have been very successful at reinforcing the opportunity to, again, connect with other people through digital as relationships become reoriented in a modern era.
What should marketers know about reaching this group using digital media?
Well, mostly it's that they want to connect with their family and friends. And also they're looking for new friends. So the idea of a senior citizen chat room, for example, or a silver chat room, whether it be done by an HSBC or whether it be done by a cosmetics company, these are very valid social platforms that marketers should be thinking seniors will respond to. Because again, as senior citizens, or as the mature market actually becomes more displaced or disoriented, they're looking for new forms of social connectivity, new forms of structure, social structure that can take the place of what is now a little bit unsettled, given the changes of Chinese society.
Thank you, Tom, for being in our studio.
My pleasure, thank you.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll hear from Matthieu David about what foreign businesses need to know about China's senior consumers.
I think it's an amazing journey for China, for the last 3 years, and I'm really proud that China has been able to sort of bring together so many thought leaders and to step change, the marketing leadership in China, which is really needed.
Talking about the senior market is talking about a population born before 1955. That means they experience the Cultural Revolution, the opening of China with reforms of Deng Xiaoping, and ultimately the rising income of the entire population. They have experienced enormous change living in a stable and closed society, which makes them fundamentally different from senior citizens in the West. Consequently, marketers who want to reach Chinese seniors need to think differently too. Seniors here are much more receptive to investment and traditions than in the West. Nursing homes are one example. Culturally speaking, leaving your parents in a nursing home is hardly admitted in China. To solve this issue, one Chinese company called Pine Tree offers care services delivered at home. And its services include community activities such as playing mahjong, cards, or dancing, which are activities deeply rooted into the Chinese culture. They also offer traditional Chinese medicine. Let's take another example. Even though this population is very price sensitive, they know the meaning of investment, having lived in a fast-growing economy where opportunities had to be caught. That is why they are willing to invest in real estate, life insurance, and valuable products such as art. Well, in Chinese art at least. 5 sectors particularly show potential within the senior market. Investments, including real estate, art, overseas, and life insurance, overseas investment and life insurance, medical devices, healthcare services, nutrition and healthy food, as well as family tourism. Challenges exist in this industry, namely pricing point, qualified labor, and cultural barriers. But the opportunities are enormous. By 2050, there will be more elderly people in China than the entire US population. Just always remember to adapt to this society and its specific characteristics.
Welcome back. We're in our studio with Kevin Gentle, Digital Strategy Director at LabBrand, Kitty Lun, Chairman and CEO at Lun and Partners in China, Kunal Sinha, Chairman, Asia Pacific, the Futures Company. Well, thank you guys for coming to our studio. It's good to have you. We just heard from Tom Doctoroff talking about how marketers are missing this enormous opportunity with Chinese senior consumers. Do you agree with them? Do you think they're overlooked?
Entirely. We've been tracking this segment for 4 or 5 years, and we've recognized that they not only are important in terms of the sheer numbers, but also in the kind of influence that they have on the families. I mean, these are people who, we have to remember, have been saving up for the last 25 years. And that's deep pockets, and they're not only spending on their grandchildren, they're also beginning to spend on themselves. And this is a demographic that's only going to grow in numbers. And by 2020, they're estimated to be about 250 million senior citizens in China.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, China has an aging population, so is everywhere else in the world, and in particular in China, because, you know, you have less people born every year, but, you know, people are living longer lives. So, you know, yeah, enormous opportunity. And I think we shouldn't just confine senior citizens to, you know, healthcare and medicine and things like that. There should be a lot more opportunity. I mean, you know, when you think of mass market, you know, they consume music, they consume, you know, drama, they consume any kind of fast-moving consumer products. But, you know, they may have a different taste, but they still need to drink and eat and consume all kinds of things. Huge opportunity there.
That's an interesting thought, because I mean, pharmaceuticals, for example, healthcare are pretty obvious categories that they would spend money on. What are some of the less obvious things that marketers should start thinking about?
In my mind, one of the categories that's very strongly growing with seniors is tourism. And that goes back to something that we discovered a while back about seniors. Is that a lot of them know that because of the environment in which they grew, they missed out on a lot of things. So right now they're busy developing habits, they're busy trying to discover the world, sometimes even learning languages, and traveling is one of these things that allows them to catch up on what they missed. So travel is one of the categories that might be overlooked, but that's very much growing with senior citizens.
Well, what changes have you seen in the levels of spending among this group?
Oh, certainly, you know, the levels of spending are very high. I mean, we also measured some of the areas that they were spending on. And we realized that after utilities and food, the next highest item was actually on telecommunications, right? They were spending a lot on phones, on calling up people, on computers, and that's because now they want to keep in touch with not just their family, but they're reconnecting with their old classmates. So these clubs are beginning to form on all kinds of social networking sites, which seniors love to share interests, tourism, photography, sport, and you have to, you know, lots and lots of opportunities there. And again, in healthcare, it's not just the medicines and, you know, the supplements. Seniors know what's good for them. So when in Chinese New Year, they see these ads or they see these brands trying to push nutritional supplements, they say, we don't want them, we know what's good for us. But what is interesting is the use of technology for healthcare. Now, there are now interesting apps that are emerging where the doctor, the hospital provides appointments online. So seniors don't have to go and stand in queue for 2 hours in a crowded public hospital. They will get an alert 10 minutes before and they can just turn up. And then the doctor's assistant sets up reminders on their phones so that they remember, they're reminded when to take their medicines or when their next checkup is due.
As somebody who does digital strategy, it's absolutely true. The population of netizens over 50 is one that's the fastest growing. By next year, there will be over 100 million urban netizens that are over 50.
That's very interesting.
So thinking that senior citizens can only be reached through the radio, TV, that's a big mistake. They're very active online.
In fact, I think older people, they have one thing that they've got more than young people. They've got time. So, I think older people are just like young people. They have dreams. They're still very energetic because, of the good health care, good diet, Older people or so-called senior citizens are still, very, very active. And the lifespan is also very long. So, there are actually famous bloggers, famous backpackers, famous hip-hop dancers who are like over 50, over 60, in China. And in The Voice of China, there is this, contestant who is over 60. And, he's one of the celebrities because, a lot of people are, backing him because knowing that, reaching 60, you still have your dreams. So I think it's actually all in all, it feels very, very good to be, more aged in China because, you don't really feel the kind of discrimination that people still view you as, a normal human being. In fact, I've got an example for one of our clients using all these older, so-called older people to appeal to the younger generation because, look at them. They still have all these energy, they still have dreams, and they still, lead a very active life. So, if we can have a look at the film,
yeah, let's take a look. Yeah. I'm Chinese, and my parents are senior citizens in China in that sense. Oftentimes, when it comes to digital, online, and this kind of newer technology apps, like you said, they want my help on that. They are very curious, and like you said, very energetic. They've got the time, and they want to learn. So I'm curious, how important is it to market to their children as the key influencers?
Oh, that is important. But again, the key thing to remember, as opposed to seniors in Europe or seniors in America, where you have to treat seniors as these people who have to cope with loneliness. Here, the seniors are embedded in society. There's a clear role. So bonding between different generations, technology and these kind of devices can play a huge role. In fact, if you look at what Xiaomi is doing, they're marketing their new sort of lower end or lower price phone called Hongmi as an intergenerational bonding sort of phone. So I think again, that's clearly an area where seniors and their families can engage with each other. Video phone or sort of voice chats and video chats are extremely valuable to all those seniors whose kids are living overseas, and that's something that they do almost every day just to keep in touch.
And also remember, grandparents are great influencers on children products. So, if, grandparents believe, whatever that's good for their grandchildren, they will influence the parents, their kids, to buy for their grandchildren. So, actually, there are a lot of products, both educational, devices to help the kids learn or play, nutritional products for children, for infants. A lot of them need the endorsement of grandparents. And actually, sometimes we see grandparents present in the campaigns because, you need the endorsement of grandparents.
And do they tend to also hold a huge amount of sway over like bigger purchases like property, cars, and that kind of thing?
In fact, they do. In a lot of cases, for example, again, anecdotally, we found that when it comes to buying property, the seniors or the parents kind of look at the younger generation, the post-80s generation, who are spending money for a certain period of time just after they start getting a job and getting some money, and they allow the kids to spend for 3-4 years, and they say, I'm putting the down payment on an apartment, now you better start paying up the mortgage. So that's like enforcing those behaviors. Huge influence there. What's happening to weddings? The weddings are actually, all the wedding planning is actually done by the parents. It's not, the couple basically decide, okay, we're going to get married. The family sits down and figures out how much money they're going to spend, but then the logistics is all left to the
That sounds very familiar. I remember from my wedding, I was basically a guest at a wedding, basically showing up, doing the right thing, and then the rest of it was up to my parents.
Just like the commercial that I showed you, just now, it's a car commercial. Target is young people, but we know by studies that many parents are footing the bill. So that's why we are using older people to say to the younger people that, hey, come on, get up, go out, enjoy yourself with this car, because we want it to resonate with the older people, the parents, so that they will either agree for the young people to buy it or they will foot the bill.
One last question. Looking forward, what will the next generations of senior consumers be like in China?
I think, looking at what's been happening, I think they will become more demanding. They will demand that there are products and services, increasingly a lot of services, being tailored for them. Recognize our needs. Just for example, they are the ones who are doing shopping for the entire family. Supermarkets will have to kind of realign themselves to start making it more convenient for seniors to shop. They will start doing online shopping, but going out shopping is part of that whole community thing that they do. So that will need to change as one goes into the future.
I think we had this term "kid out," for describing adults who refuse to grow up. I think the next generation will be senior teens, because they are very energetic, they are in touch, they see the world, and they are very peer group influenced. They're just like teens. But it's just that they are older. So, and they want to dress up, like younger people. So I call them senior teens.
Well, Kitty, Kunal, and Kevin, thank you for coming in today. It's a very interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for
having us.
Thank you very much.
That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Youku, Tudou, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo, WeChat, and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. See you again.